Chapter 17, Electromagnetic Reality. What if human beings are far more energetically sensitive than we've been taught? In this chapter, we explore frequency, intuition, resonance, emotional energy, and the possibility that consciousness interacts with reality in ways we barely understand. Chapter 17, Electromagnetic Reality. An undercurrent of dark worship has infiltrated our planet and is vying for control of our lives, and most people are still too lulled by distraction to see it. I personally don't know if the pitchfork-wielding guy in red exists, or if that image was just another cartoon designed to keep us from noticing the real danger. What does exist, provably, traceably, and pervasively, is a contingent of individuals who pursue an anti-human agenda in the Dark One's name. Whether these individuals are fully human or something else entirely is almost beside the point. What matters is this: a portion of the population is actively perpetrating a form of evil so sickening, so twisted, and so grotesque that most people can't even fathom it. That disbelief is the dark side's greatest shield. These individuals will do anything for power, for youth, for greed, for access, for control, for energy, for status, for things they think they value. These things come at a staggering cost, the cost of humanity itself. The sacrifice of innocence is the highest currency in their world. They are feeding off what's pure in order to gain more of what's perverse. This isn't metaphor or theory. It's not some ancient myth you can brush off. It's happening right now, and it's structured, protected, and sustained through systems of blackmail, coercion, and global complicity. Whether the red guy or his son or the goat-headed bath guy exists as an entity is secondary. The fact that there are people, celebrities, elites, financiers, politicians, and even educators and influencers who practice sex, magic, ritual abuse, and sacrificial rites involving children is what we must confront, because it does exist. It will continue unless enough of us stop looking away and start naming it. If you want to go deeper on this, I point to a docuseries I produced with LifeSource called Alice in Pedoland. It's available on Rumble, and you'll find the links at lifesource.global and at the end of this audio. I warn you, it doesn't tiptoe or sugarcoat. However, it does guide you gently through the darkness so you can face it head on, because that's the only way we'll ever break it. The depths to which the Dark Ones go can be beyond human comprehension. Yet this is the force that must be met. If we're serious about reclaiming this world, we must become the kind of beings who are not afraid to look at the darkness straight in the eye and command, "Not on my watch." What are you in service to? Jane says, it's been suggested that we're looking at 10 to 35% of individuals who worship the dark. A football team took a photo with us in Australia. It was the Aussie Rules Grand Finals, and 3 guys at the front of the photo were doing some sort of Illuminati symbolism with their hands. It was obvious. I have worked in elite sports for 24 years. Some of my family's best friends are retired elite athletes. My daughter is an elite pro athlete. So I've been around that environment a lot. It's clear to me that there are athletes who are part of the satanic worshiping sect. How did those 3 in the photo get selected, recruited, brainwashed, manipulated, or blackmailed into participating? Why those 3 and why not the 3 next to them? This is where I ask, how low down does this go? Because it's in my everyday circle. I respond, does this concern you, it being so close? Jane responds, it doesn't scare me because we are powerful. It's not an issue, but it interests me. There's a lot of blackmail, obviously. There's a lot of coercion to go into the cults that do evil stuff. I respond, Satanism is, in my opinion, directly connected to hedonism. As we get into a more hedonistic society, the practice of Satanism becomes the quest for the unbridled power they think they can acquire from practicing the occult. This goes back to the Black Wizard, Aleister Crowley, and his teachings. His famous saying is, "Do as thou wilt," which means do as thou will, without repercussions or any morality other than to do what makes you feel good. There's no moral high ground except to serve yourself and whomever you are worshiping in evil's name. As long as you're doing what you want to do without concern of the harm you are doing to others, or even yourself, you are in service to the dark. To me, those things are grossly connected. Look at all the kids who are being sucked into this because, yes, God has left the building, so to speak, with prayer and unconditional love drummed out of daily life. Our motto in America used to be, "In God we trust." Now we trust no one. Jane says, Australia was actually founded as an atheistic country. We were a prison cult, an uncivilized outpost that seemed free but which has actually been under the control of tyrants administering fear. We're seeing the repercussions of that now. One of the reasons we had the most people compliant during COVID was because of fear of death, fear of not following the rules, fear of what the authorities could do to you. There is no spirituality here. Addressing evil. Jane continues, how as a human being do you begin to address this evil? When reacting to this, how about saying to yourself, are you coming from fear or are you coming from love? I respond, that saying doesn't necessarily resonate with me because I don't understand it on an emotional level. I don't comprehend it because I am always coming from love. I've left fear so far behind, I can no longer grasp the feeling. For me personally, I say, when you feel fear, you're creating emotional food for them. This is what they want. This is what they feed on. They love when you're distressed or behaving in a hateful way because you are feeding them. You're adding energy to their power grid. Why would anyone feel hatred? Even in the darkest moments of your life, when people have done you wrong, you shouldn't hate. You might slip and say, I hate this or that, but you shouldn't feel it. The dark side loves that. They want us to hate each other. Good, they think. They fight each other and not us. They don't have to lift a finger if they've got us warring with our neighbors, families, lovers, and selves. To me, the more you can go into, I'm reluctant to repeat, the cliched service to others, but the more you open your heart centers to understand the humanity around you, and to allow the love energy to flow through you, to put yourself in other circumstances and allow yourself to love them, even the most horrible creatures, the higher you will rise. It puts you in a higher state. You become untouchable. That's not just spiritual fluff. That is electromagnetic reality. A high-frequency field simply repels parasites. This goes back to creating your own reality, the reality yourself creates at that level. We're not talking about addressing evil directly here, but how to rise above it and to keep it from affecting you. Because at a certain frequency, darkness cannot cling to you. It doesn't have the tools or the tether. Benevolent action. Instead of saying service to others, let's say conduct benevolent action. Benevolent action is when you are making sure that every single thing you say and do is not hurtful to someone. Even better than not being hurtful is being helpful in some way. Maybe you're simply serving as a listening device. You know you're there to listen and lend a friendly ear in a supportive way. Maybe you're in a situation where you're being asked to give some direction and guidance. You don't always know what the other person needs. Maybe they need you to make them understand their self-worth, what their unique skills are as a human. As soon as you start on this, whoever you're talking to will stop and listen. They will become rapt as you identify the traits unique or wonderful in them. You focus on that. From there, it blossoms. You've just fed their soul a nutrient it may have been starving for decades. Jane says, You're talking about how to build a deeper connection to others, which in turn wards off evil. I respond, yes, in some sense destroys it through starvation. Back to Lush, these negative emotions are not our own. When fear, depression, or rage, etc. are created, the dark side sits back and says, "We did this, we created this." The whole world is upside down. I think most people have realized that by now. The things that we should love and honor have been inverted, and everything that's been told to us is the opposite of truth. Once you realize the world is the opposite of what it should be, it clears up a lot. Understanding the truth of things is an enormous step to eradicating the evil that is all around us. Prayer helps, but sitting in a bubble does not. You're not here to transcend life. You're here to transform it. Untouchable by design. To me, the more you open your heart center, the more you activate something unbreakable. It's not about being a martyr. It's about seeing others clearly, feeling their humanity, even when it's buried beneath layers of distortion. When you allow the current of love to move through you, not sentimental love, but a fierce, truth-based love, you begin to lift. When you can put yourself in someone else's shoes, even someone who's behaved horribly, and choose to recognize their pain rather than reflect it back, you enter a higher state. You become harder to target. You become energetically untouchable. This is what it means to rise above evil. Not to confront it in hand-to-hand combat, but to make yourself invisible to its grip, to vibrate beyond its reach. That is what we mean when we say you're creating your own reality at a higher frequency. Your rebel self starts constructing a reality where the dark cannot succeed. Whack a shadow. Jane says, this loving connection to others wards off evil. I say, yes, in some sense it destroys evil, not by attacking it, but by starving it. The world is inverted. Everything we should cherish has been mocked or degraded. Everything they told us was normal is the very opposite of truth. When you understand that inversion, when it clicks, it changes the game. The fog clears. Truth in itself is a form of protection. Understanding is a form of power. Jane says, when you are triggered or are feeling that sadness, depression, anger, or frustration, in other words, lower level emotions, how do you throw them off? How do you raise your vibration? I answer, instead of trying to force a higher vibration, I look at it like this. That higher vibration is the natural result of doing the deeper work. It's the byproduct, a damn good byproduct. But there's a trick. Follow your triggers. Every one of them is a breadcrumb to something hidden. The path to self-realization and ascension runs straight through your pain points. The triggers are your curriculum. They're fast, slippery, sneaky, like that arcade game where you whack moles with a mallet as they pop up. You think you're done with one, and another shows up out of nowhere. Bam! Every time one rises, you follow it and dispel it. That's the work. Sadness, frustration, depression, they can all be flipped if you recognize them as messengers, not enemies. Now, of course, I am not talking about situations with biochemical imbalance. I am not minimizing deep physiological conditions. I will say this. I've worked hard to support my system holistically. I don't have those imbalances. If someone does, it may not be easy, especially at first. That's why I go into depth on physical health, because your energetic clarity starts with your nervous system and your gut-brain axis. Remove what clouds your system. You have to work it through. I don't get depressed anymore. Now, go back 30 years ago, that was another story. When I was being ignored, dismissed, rejected by publishers who wouldn't read my work, I spiraled. Every rejection letter hit like a stone. I would crawl into bed, pull the covers over my head, and disappear. Sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes for far longer. Sleep was my secret weapon. It was my reset button. Shutting off my mind, even briefly, gave me the chance to bypass the mental loop and ask for clarity. I would call in source. I'd surrender the noise. I swear I could feel the presence of spirit teams whispering, "You're fine. We've got you. Rest now. When you wake, it will be clear." It was. That process gifted me unshakable self-knowledge and authentic self-worth. Eventually, I no longer needed the world to validate me. I validated myself. I saw my own becoming. I wrote through it. I kept sharpening the blade until my words became unbreakable. That part of the process took years. Years of isolation, perseverance, and transformation of ego into self-esteem. And it made me. Sadness, depression, frustration, none of them are pointless. They're invitations. They're signs pointing to what still needs integrating. That adage is true, despite how often it's misused. Everything happens for a reason. The trick is, find the origin. Trace it to the source, because once you do, you're no longer a prisoner to it. You're the one holding the map. The covert playlist. People in this movement often talk about frequency, and many send out energetic transmissions, sound baths, healing tones, intention-based music. I don't think there's anything wrong with broadcasting positive vibrations, especially when it's done with integrity and clarity. There's a line, though, that must not be crossed. Manipulating frequencies or embedding subliminal messages without full disclosure. That's not healing, that's programming. It is a tactic of the cabal. To do this without the listener's consent is a form of psychological warfare. It's brainwashing dressed up in spiritual drag. Doesn't matter if the intention is love and light or something nefarious. When you remove conscious awareness, you're tampering with an individual's right to self-determination. That's not medicine, it's control. We've been subjected to this long enough. Frequency manipulation is one of their most insidious tools. The sickness of mind control has infected humanity through sound, language, media, and vibration for decades. It's been weaponized. The damage is deep. As such, humanity is not operating at full free will capacity, not even close. We're functioning under a dense fog of suggestion, coercion, and false narratives programmed to accept illusion as truth. In my observation, we're at about 4% free will. That's it. The rest is conditioned behavior. Now for some good news. When you start stripping away the layers, eliminating the lies, the trauma, the subliminals, your capacity for true choice explodes. You remember who you are. You remember what it feels like to decide from a place of alignment, not programming. The setup called freedom. Free will cannot exist without full information. That's the core of consent. Without the truth, your choice isn't really a choice. It's a setup. That's why I'm relentless about getting to the bottom line. Truth isn't optional. It's foundational. How can we operate with autonomy when we're flying through a thunderstorm at night and the entire console board has gone dark? That's where most people are, navigating blind, trusting autopilot systems built by the very ones who disabled their instincts. Jane says, "You've given your tacit agreement to something because you haven't explored it properly. You don't understand it, and you've given somebody else power over you, and that is unacceptable." I add, completely unacceptable. It gets worse, because by doing this, you're not just compromising your own life, you're affecting your children's lives. Generational harm is being carried forward because of what we're too afraid, too busy, or too conditioned to see. Thank you for listening to this excerpt.